Hey everyone, welcome back to another video. So today is finally going to be our D1 year Q&A. I asked you all for these questions probably like 2 months ago on Instagram, and I thought I'd make the video sooner, but then I realized it made more sense to put it in a series of videos that are helpful for incoming D1 students because it's really full of a lot of advice and my own experiences throughout all of my first year of dental school. So there are a ton of questions, probably at least 20 questions that I have down here. I had like 12 pages of screenshots to scroll through, and then I put all the questions onto my laptop here that way I wouldn't miss anything. I think I answered every single question in some sense. Some questions were kind of repeats of each other, and a lot of the things you all asked about I already have videos about, so if there's something that I already have a thorough video about, I'm just going to reference you to that rather than going into a long explanation when you can see something even better put together for that specific topic. So I hope this video will be helpful, and I'm really excited to share some of my experiences from my first year of dental school with you all. The first thing that a lot of you asked was what was the best experience of my first year. I also didn't really prepare answers for these ahead of time, so I might be kind of thinking as I go because I wanted the answers to just be very authentic. I think that the best part really was just like the growth that I've seen. I mentioned that in another video, kind of in one of the reflections about my first year videos. There's 2 of them that you could watch, but I think it was really just the growth that I saw starting out dental school. I was in like a very anxious state and very uncomfortable and a lot of comparison and just really eager to finally move to Ann Arbor. So getting into Ann Arbor once we were allowed to start doing partially in person was so exciting. I love being here. I love being around my classmates and my roommate, and I love getting to learn dentistry, and finally getting into clinic and doing hands-on activities and assisting has been, I think, some of the highlights of our first year for sure. But also, like I said, just getting comfortable in Ann Arbor, getting comfortable as a dental student, starting to get to know classmates, just like the overall progression from being like all uncomfortable to being more comfortable, I'd say has been the best part about first year. Another thing a lot of people asked are what are some of your goals for second year? So I do mention that in the video, same interview 1 year apart, so go ahead and watch that if you want an answer to that question. Someone asked, did you ever have any doubts or thoughts that dentistry might not be for you during your first year? I think personally, this could obviously be different for everyone. I didn't have any of those experiences, but that's just me. I obviously had challenging moments where I was doing a lot of comparison, like I said, like, man, this seems to be coming easier to others than it is to me. And that was discouraging, but it never made me feel like I can't be a dentist or I shouldn't be in dental school. It was more of just frustration and getting down on myself, not so much thinking that this wasn't the right career for me, because I did stay so heavily involved in student organizations and I was having a lot of interactions with dentists through my podcast and everything and through those organizations that it kept reaffirming me of my vision for my career and my reasons for going into dentistry and what makes me unique as a person, that I didn't necessarily doubt what I can bring to the profession and how I'm gonna fit in to the world as a dentist. How do I make my Google Calendar and digital planning for dental school? So I have a video all about how I time manage and do my digital planning, so you can watch that one. But in general, I use Apple Calendar, not Google Calendar. And then our secretary creates a Google Calendar for our class that I kind of side reference when I'm doing my own planning. And my Apple Calendar is tweaked from the school provided schedule based on what works best for me. It's very flexible with the online education. And I also use a daily to-do list template that I created in Adobe Spark Post, but you could probably make one on Canva or something, and then you just export it as a file, a PDF. That way you can put it into your Notability app or whatever note-taking app you use as a daily to-do list on your iPad. How to prepare for D1 year the summer before. So next week's video is actually going to be everything I wish I knew about dental school. So it's gonna have a lot of advice and a lot of things I wish I did, things I wish I did sooner. So that's gonna kind of be covered more in depth next week. So definitely subscribe and stay tuned for that. But just for some general things, I would say don't try to do anything, just try to relax and have fun and enjoy this time before you get into dental school, which is very hectic and busy and you don't have quite as much time for yourself. We'll talk about that later in this video, but you don't have quite as much time for yourself. However, if you are someone that really just wants to be doing something, I would say you could review dental terminology terminology, review steps for different preps and restorations. You could also review dental anatomy or start learning dental anatomy for the first time if you really, really wanted to be doing something. Or you could also review head and neck anatomy. Any of those things I think would be helpful and start to get the ball rolling for your first year. Will you have a summer break? Do you get breaks in dental school? So obviously I asked these back in like April once we were finishing up our semester. So we had 1 week off between end of April and early May, and May is when we started our summer term. So our summer term goes from the beginning of May until August 16th, I think, and then we have a week and a half off, and then we start classes again on the 30th for our fall semester that's going to go until mid-December, and then we have that like long winter break over Christmas and New Year's, and then we start our winter term, which again goes like January 9th until mid to late April, like I said, for the semester we just finished. So it's pretty much a year-round thing. You get a break between each semester, and we also get a week off the very first week of July. So technically we have 1 week off during the semester, 1 week off before, and a week and a half off after. So you don't really get like a full break. You just get little breaks, but it's better than nothing. Number one piece of advice for someone starting dental school, I would just say wait till next week's video because I have all of the advice that's gonna be in that. And someone also asked advice that I would give to my younger self starting dental school, like me this time a year ago. I would just say to avoid comparison. Obviously that's a lot easier said than done. I actually did a whole podcast about it and got submissions from dentists and dental students about their experiences, so you can listen to that if you think that's something that could be helpful for you. But I started off dental school feeling so stressed and overwhelmed because this person was doing this when they studied, this person was studying this much, this person wasn't studying this much, this person was scoring this way, this person thought that Anki was great, this person thought that study guides were great, this person doesn't watch lectures, this person does. Everyone's going to be doing something differently, and I thought that I needed to fit some specific mold of how to study, how to balance my time, how to just function as a human when I am a dental student. But you don't need to. You're going to be your own person regardless. So it's really better just to focus on you, what feels right for you, what's filling you up, what's a good balance for yourself, and taking that balance, having rest, filling yourself up with things that make you happy is really the best way to be successful in dental school. So that's what I would tell myself, and that kind of answers the other question about like number one overarching piece of advice. Next thing, was the course load hard to manage? Was it harder or easier than you expected? So just in general, yes, of course, dental school is hard. I would say it's easier than I expected in the sense that I think anyone in undergrad that hears you take almost 30 credits in dental school, which is true, that would make you think that's going to be impossible. And it's not impossible. It's hard, but it's manageable. And later on in this video, we're going to talk about managing that and what that's all like. But I would say it was easier than I expected, but it's not easy. And one of the reasons it's been a lot easier than I expected is because I've been surprised that while managing the course load, I have so much free time and so much flexibility. Obviously, some weeks you have less free time, and however much free time and flexibility you give yourself does kind of translate into how you perform on your exams and practicals. More studying and more practice gives you better performance, but it's all about finding that line for you. What are your expectations for your own performance, and how well can you perform while also taking care of yourself is the balance that I've been working to find in dental school, and I think a lot of my classmates have as well, which is why you have a range of super high scoring students to more average scoring students. So another thing I feel like is important to emphasize is obviously it's hard, but one of the really big things is just staying on top of everything, having really strong time management and organization, having some classmates that you go to that hold you accountable, that you hold accountable, that you can ask questions for clarification or share study guides. And for us, our whole class is involved in that because we have a really active Slack platform where we communicate, and anyone, I can just shoot a question and they're like, oh, is this exam cumulative? Or does anyone understand this concept? And we'll all help each other out. But I think that's essential, whether that's on a big scale with your whole class or just like a small group of you. You need to have people to help you manage everything because it can be a lot and you can easily forget a quiz that's like only open for 5 minutes one random afternoon. So it's really good to have people holding you accountable as well. And the only way to do that is by putting yourself out there and kind of making that a two-way street and helping others also. Another question is, was it as difficult as you expected, and were your classes exam focused? So I already kind of answered, like, was it as difficult as I expected? But were our classes exam focused? It depends on the class. I can put up an example of one of our schedules here. This is in the presentation that I give to pre-dental clubs that want me to come speak to them. but basically anything in pink has a lab component of some sort. There might also be lecture exams, which usually there is. Like even our clinical foundations, which is the sim lab class, has 4 or 5 practicals a semester of like actually drilling and filling, but we still have a midterm, sometimes a second midterm, and a final that are written exams. Pretty much all of our classes have some form of exams or competencies, and I would say most classes are exam focused. Some you have a couple projects or like reflection assignments and then one big exam at the end, or maybe a midterm and an exam. I would say most classes give you other forms of points, whether that's participation, group projects, extra credit, whatever it may be, plus exams, so you kind of have a more well-rounded grade. But some classes is just 1 exam or just 2 exams and that's your whole grade. It really just depends on the class. Did you change your opinion about specializing either way during your first year? So that basically means, did I plan to specialize when I came in, and has that changed? So I came in assuming I'm not going to specialize. I love the idea of being a general dentist. I love the flexibility that that has. I have a video about why I chose dentistry, so feel free to watch that if you're curious on my why. I guess that vision for my career and my future and my profession and everything is always developing, especially as I'm talking to new dentists, and the landscape of dentistry is always shifting a little bit, but I'm still 100% sure that I want to be a general dentist. The only thing that's more TBD is what my outlook is going to look like upon graduation. Am I going to do a 1-year AEGD or GPR, which are general dentistry residency program, or am I going to go right into associateship? And how long will I work as an associate before I start up a practice? Will I actually start up a practice? These are all things that we will see. How difficult was it bonding with your classmates and making friends? So if you've watched any of my videos before, you would know that for the most part before this, I've had a really hard time, not really hard, but I haven't made like best friends in dental school yet. But I would say this summer, things are already improving a lot. I feel like I'm hanging out with a lot more people and like more frequently with the same people, and I think that I'm just kind of figuring out like which people I vibe with, and coming back around to the same understanding that you kind of find in undergrad is that like less is more. Like having a couple really close friends is much better than trying to make every single person in the dental school like you and want to be around you and invite you to all their things, because you can't go to everything that happens. You can't be a part of every friend group. You can't click with everyone, and I think that's natural for a lot of us. Our personality, we just want people to like us. We want people to enjoy our company, but at the end of the day, you only have so much of yourself to give anyways. So I feel like I'm coming back around to the realization that like I only need a couple really good friends, and I think that with my roommates next year, just more people in my class that I'm starting to spend more time with, it's getting a lot better and I'm feeling closer with people. So overall, I would say at first it was definitely difficult, especially with COVID, which we'll talk about in another question as well, but it's getting better finally almost a full year later. What was your biggest realization? I think just because of that last question we just answered, I had always heard everyone saying, oh my gosh, dental school was actually like the best 4 years, way better than undergrad. Those people are my family. Like I had the best time. I learned so much. I grew so much. We made the best memories. And I think most of first year I was a little disappointed in my experience socially, like I was saying. So I think my realization was that dental school transition is a lot like the undergrad transition, at least so far for me, in the sense that it takes some time to kind of build up your people and figure out your crew and start making memories. Like your first year, usually your friends kind of change by the time you graduate undergrad, and I think that's a little bit similar for dental school as well, more than I really thought it would be, because I thought that we're all like grown adults now, but it can still be kind of cliquey and stuff. It just kind of depends on who you're talking to and who you're around. I probably got asked by like 7 to 10 of you, how was the transition from undergrad to dental school? And I actually have a whole podcast episode about that, so that's probably the best place for you to listen. It's called like Undergrad versus Dental School. I will put the episode here for you if you want to go and listen. And I do also answer it in video format if you prefer something a little bit shorter form. I answer it in this Q&A that I filmed during my first semester of dental school. What was the most stressful part of your first year? So this one I had to think about a little bit. I would say it's probably when you fail. And you keep failing, and you fail your first practical, you fail another practical, you fail an exam, you're failing a class. Like right now, as I'm filming this, I'm not passing our respiratory class because we had a midterm and I did not pass that exam. So it can be kind of like daunting at first. getting used to that. I know not everyone in dental school has this experience. Some people continue to be top tier students at dental school, but most people are going to go down a few levels academically once you're in dental school because everyone came in with great stats and grades and studying and abilities, if that makes sense. So just like adjusting to not always being successful was stressful, of course. At first it just feels very overwhelming and uncomfortable and different to not do well on something. It feels panicky and it makes you stressful about how will this affect me really badly long term? Am I gonna get kicked out? So I can tell you that at least at every dental school I've ever heard of, you don't get kicked out of dental school unless there's very extenuating circumstances. But if you fail an exam or end up failing a class or fail a practical and end up failing that class, you just remediate is the word, and that basically, depending on the class, is going to look different, but that either means just retaking a new final to make yourself pass the class, redoing the practical, or in some cases you actually retake the actual class. But either way, you never really get kicked out. Like, they're going to help you through, you're going to learn it, and it's all going to be okay. So I think for first year, that was probably the most stressful thing, was not knowing what would happen if you did bad on something, or like doing bad on something and being worried if you were going to be able to catch up your grade. But I can say that all of my classes that I had not passed exams or quizzes in, I was able to bring my grade up without needing to remediate the whole class so far in my first year. And then any practicals that I remediated, I did really well on the second practical, like would have gotten an A if it was graded that way. But since it was a remediation, it was just like, once you pass, you pass. It didn't really matter how well you did, but I can tell you that you will improve. Sorry, that was a very long answer, but I think that's something that people are very worried about, so I wanted to kind of bring that to light and make you all aware of how that works in dental school. First day of sim lab, what to know, what to expect. So that will reference you to last week's video all about sim lab. That would really answer all your questions. Tips for time management. So other than what I already put in a video that I made at the middle-ish of dental school over the winter, which was like how I time manage and manage my schedule and everything, you probably want to watch that. So that's digital planning and the to-do list that I showed in that video. But another thing that I think has been helpful for me is staying reasonably busy. I think that I kind of went extreme, just putting that out there, but I think that joining one or two things, getting involved in a couple things, and then also scheduling and like making agreements and appointments with your friends or family that you have stuff going on during the week really helps you actually be more productive with your time, because rather than thinking, okay, I have all these tasks to do or all this studying to do, if you have something blocking off all of Saturday, then you can't procrastinate it to Saturday because you have a club event or you're seeing family. So I think that by being a little bit busier, you actually have better time management and get more stuff done. I've noticed that for me, but I'm also, like I said, a little extreme. I'm involved in a lot and I do all of the social media, content creation stuff, as well as dental school and all the clubs. So I took it to a little extreme. All right, we're probably about halfway through, just for a little reference point of where you're at, but I guess you can see on how long the video is. But we're gonna talk a little bit about SimLab and some classes for some of these questions. So one question was my favorite SimLab experiences. I think that my favorite like overall thing we did in our clinical foundations course was probably the caries removal practical, because we got to drill on human teeth. So they were extracted human teeth and then you mounted them. I showed all this on an Instagram story, but basically they were extracted human teeth and you got to use a caries removal burr, drill out the caries, smooth out that prep, and then if you wanted to, you could fill it with resin modified glass ionomer or with composite or something. But really just like the act of getting to drill out caries was very satisfying. It was very fun. It was cool to work on a real tooth texture rather than drilling on the fake teeth that we use in SimLab. It doesn't feel the same. So it gave a lot of us more confidence, because it's a lot harder to mess up on the actual anatomy and the texture that human teeth have compared to the ones in SimLab, kind of cut like butter sometimes, and it's really easy to make mistakes. And then a couple of our other practicals that I really enjoyed and was better at, I would say, were class 4s. I wasn't great at first, so that's like restoring a whole part of your front tooth, but I found it to be very fun and interesting and cool because it was like a very aesthetic restoration. And then I also thought that amalgams were very fun to do and something that came a little bit easier to me, so that was always good. Favorite lecture class, I would say either immunology or cariology. I really just find those classes to be very interesting. We had immunology once. It was called infection and immunity, but it was immunology. And then we also had karyology 1, 2, and 3. So for 3 different semesters. Our professor's amazing. She's like world renowned, and it's just so interesting to learn how caries progress chemically, mechanically, what's happening there, and then also all the different treatments, like I said, how they're working, how they're affecting the caries, how they're targeting it, more about like your oral microbiome, about different treatments in dentistry, what works for different patient populations, what's accessible, what's not, what's up and coming, like talking about a caries vaccine maybe. Like, it was all very interesting. So that was a class I really enjoyed. What was your most challenging class? Some people ask hardest class, least favorite class, however you want to phrase it. Just listing off a few, I would say that genetics and cell biology, those 2 classes were very difficult, and they were taught by the same professor, so that could have been some kind of reason there, but who knows. And then I also thought that perio, so perio 1, Introduction to Periodontics, that we had last semester was fairly tricky, just time consuming to complete all the material, and also challenging to get down the hand instruments for hand scaling was just a whole other thing to learn. It's like dental hygiene is its own degree. So like learning how to do a dental cleaning is not some easy task, and they put it in as like one little class with all these other classes. So that was challenging, just trying to learn that, and it's still something I'm working on and still something I'm trying to get better at and more comfortable with. And I guess one class that would be obviously my most challenging is biomaterials, because that, if you look at my transcript, is my lowest grade. So biomaterials 1 and 2 we've had so far were both quite hard, and we have another one this D2 year this semester coming up, so hopefully that one goes a little bit better. What loupes do you have? When should we buy them? So I have Orascoptic brand loupes. They're 3.5 magnification with prismatic lenses, and I have the Spark wireless headlight. That's just what worked for me. I would say you really want to go between 2.5 to 3.5 magnification. Different brands, that's going to look different. So comparing brand A to brand B, you might see the exact same thing with their 3.5, but their 3.0. So when you're going between brands, that's something to keep in mind, kind of what you're actually seeing versus what they're telling you. And also, more magnification costs more money, but I really would say that you want to get something that you feel very comfortable with, and in general, people say that more magnification is better. I have a podcast episode that I did with one of my classmates where we talk about our experiences buying loupes, and I also talk about it pretty briefly in last week's video about SimLab, so I would check out those. But basically, I would try to get them within your first couple weeks of school, just because it does make life a lot easier, and you're gonna be thankful to have them. And another reason to order them sooner, like I really wish I got mine a lot sooner, is because they do take 3 to 4 weeks to come in, because they're made custom to you for your field of vision and your head shape and everything, so they take a little bit of time to come in, even once you do make the decision on which ones you want to purchase. How have your study techniques changed? So I do have a video that I made in the winter semester, how I study in dental school, that's still pretty accurate. But I would say I definitely type a lot more notes than I write these days. I still really like using Quizlet. Anki just didn't click for me. I didn't take the time to learn how to use that interface. And I don't necessarily watch every single lecture, depending on if the professor just reads off the slides, or some of our professors give transcripts for the lectures, which is my favorite thing, because I don't have to listen, I can just read it like a book. I do read textbooks occasionally in dental school, but not that often. But most of the time I'm watching a lecture, reading off a study guide, or making a study guide, making some Quizlets, and then reviewing that material. How hard was it to learn the manual skills? I feel like I'm too clumsy. Some other people asked, how hard was it to overcome struggles in SimLab? So definitely for the first person, you're definitely not too clumsy. If you want to be a dentist, where there's a will, there's a way, you can learn. Of course, it's going to come easier to some people than others. That's just how it is. But if you're determined enough and practice enough and get guidance, you're going to be okay. And for overcoming struggles, I would just say that like learning the manual skills, it's hard, but it's not too hard. I think my level coming in was probably somewhere in the middle for like how easily things came to me. It wasn't super easy, but I don't think I struggled quite as much as every single person in the class did. There were a few people I think that had a harder time than others. That's just kind of how it is. And it also depends what skill certain things I was really terrible at and certain things I was a little bit better at, and I think that's how it kind of balanced out for everyone. But in general, I'd say like overcoming struggles and learning is really, of course, practice. You're going to want to practice as much as you can, but you also don't want to not take advantage of help from others. So help from your classmates that know how to do something, 100% take advantage of that, but also ask upperclassmen for help. That's another reason to get involved in organizations, is so you could ask them to come in to help you. Of course, asking your clinical faculty for help is another great option. And for practicing, my biggest tip would be when you're starting out a new prep or restoration, each time you're going in and you get your work critiqued, I would just think, okay, this prep, I'm gonna make sure that I have a really smooth pulpal floor, and you're gonna focus on that one area of your grading sheet or one area of your critiquing. And then the next time, I'm gonna really focus on my external outline being exactly the right measurements, exactly the right shape, super smooth. So then over time, as you're practicing little different aspects, then you can kind of put it all together on a prep and have it be a really good prep. And then over time, keep practicing that till it just feels more natural. And it just takes time. It takes time, it takes practice, it takes guidance. Not everyone's advice is gonna help you, but certain advice will really be a game changer. So you just have to ask around, keep trying, and eventually you will see improvements. On that same kind of SimLab topic, how long did it take you to feel comfortable using instruments in SimLab? So short term, like feeling comfortable, getting in there, not being like nervous and super stressed, probably only the first couple sessions, like a week, just like to be practicing without being anxious and like feeling nervous and timid and uncomfortable, just like a first couple sessions. But to actually feel fully comfortable, I would say probably the entire first semester. Even now, I'm still not super proficient with indirect vision or with certain angles on certain teeth, but for the most part, I feel totally comfortable holding the drill, holding different instruments, knowing what they're used for, knowing how to do different preps and restorations for the things we've learned so far. So I would say about the first semester is how long it took for me to be comfortable. And also I was worried about the gap between fall and winter semester when we came back after those like 3 weeks off, if I would feel like I forgot things or that I lost that comfort, but it doesn't. It's kind of like riding a bike or driving a car. Even if you take a long time off, your first time back feels like, ooh, crazy, but you still remember how to do it and it still feels comfortable. Are your professors nice or intimidating? I thought this one was kind of funny. I would say that they're nice. I rarely run into any faculty that isn't kind and willing to help. Everyone has a different personality, of course, and a different teaching style, so they're not all gonna mesh with you. Certain people have different senses of humor that they interject into the class and into their emails that might rub people the wrong way. But in general, everyone is well-intended and is there because they want to teach. So overall, I would say we have really strong faculty at my program, at least at Michigan. What is your favorite way to de-stress or relax? So like on a daily basis, I love if I am going into school to walk. My walks there and my walks back are so nice, whether I'm just silent and like getting all my thoughts through my head or listening to a podcast, listening to the news, listening to music, calling a family member, or sometimes on my walks I'm like getting Instagram work done that I need to do. So that's just a really nice time because I'm not having to do school and I have an excuse to not be doing school because I'm like on the move. And also on a daily basis, I really like cooking at least like one good meal. So that's something that's a nice de-stress for me and also is fueling me well. And I try to do some form of like a walk or something else outside if I ever can, if there's nice weather. That's a big way that I enjoy de-stressing, is just getting outside in some form. But then on like more of a weekly basis, how do I de-stress? I would just say it's setting aside time to not be doing school at least one day. But for me, I've been able to usually do like the whole weekend for the most part, like Friday night till like midday Saturday, Sunday or something. I've been able to take off of school and spend time with friends or family or just myself, but not be doing school and disconnecting, I think is the best way for me to de-stress and relax. This is another question that I kind of just answered, but do you have time to make in your schedule to have fun, take at least a day off? What does that look like? So like I said, so far with the way our online learning is so flexible, for other than the little bit of time that we are scheduled in person, you can kind of do your lectures and studying as you please. So I've been able to take, like I said, pretty much most of the weekends off for most of my dental school experience so far. Another kind of wellness question, how are you able to navigate cooking and like eating right during dental school? I really don't think I could do it without HelloFresh. They don't sponsor me or anything, but if you want, I have a discount code. It just like really makes my life a lot easier. It makes it easier for cooking, and it makes me excited to cook. The food tastes good, fresh ingredients, it's easy, fun meals, and it's, like I said, it's a time for me to de-stress. It does take a little bit of time to cook, 30-40 minutes, but that's a nice break, and it's doing something that's good for me. So that's something I really enjoy, and that's kind of the main way that I do my cooking. But I would also say that with clubs and things getting back more towards normal, I probably have 1 to 3 meals, whether that's lunches or dinners, covered every week through student organizations that I'm in. So that also helps, just like going to meetings and events, lunch and learns, whatever it may be, dinners with different companies has kind of covered some of my meals as well. So that's one less thing to worry about, and something I don't have to directly pay for either, which is good. All right, almost done, just a couple more questions. Did you focus on getting higher grades or just passing so you can focus on other stuff? I wouldn't say my goal was just passing ever, but my goal also isn't I need to get an A. My goal is more do my best, as I talked about earlier, while still feeling like a full functioning human, being involved in things at the school, spending time with my loved ones, taking care of myself. So however well I can do while doing all of that and still being a happy, healthy person is more what I go for. So you could imagine trying to be full functioning. I usually don't get A's on everything, but I would say my goal definitely isn't just passing. I also like to phrase it as more of trying to learn and focus on what could be clinically applicable, what's going to be maybe a hot topic on boards, how is this going to apply to patients, anything that's a really patient care heavy class or applicable to our explaining of cases and treatments to patients. I try to extra learn and pay attention to, but certain things aren't actually that applicable. So in that case, I just try to do as well as I can. Someone said, how has your mental health been? I hope that's okay to ask, and I hope that you've been doing better. That was very sweet of you. I also got another question about that. They said, how do you manage to take time for yourself and focus on mental health? Yes, I would say my mental health has been a lot better. You can probably tell throughout the videos. Honestly, once I moved to Ann Arbor in the fall, so in September, it's been a lot better. The really only time that it was rough was in the summer semester, just because I think it was hard doing dental school alone from my parents' house, like not being around classmates, not in a school environment, not around other young adults, not in like a thriving city, like not getting to go into dental school at all. It was just a weird time, but I would say my mental health has been a lot better. I still occasionally see the dental school therapist as need be, as like I am coming into more stressful seasons, or if certain things from the past come up and start bothering me again or something, then I set up an appointment with her. But other than that, I really just have been trying to maintain that balance and taking care of myself, like I mentioned in the past couple questions, and that's been able to keep me in good spirits and everything. Everyone obviously has rougher days, and that's just a part of life, and that makes you more appreciative of the good days. So not every day is great, but in general, I'd say there's been more good days than bad days, and that's something I'm really appreciative of and feel very blessed to have. All right, 2 more questions. So this one is proudest moment of your D1 year. I also had to kind of sit and think about this one, but I think what I want my answer to be in this circumstance is just gonna be like my success on certain practicals. I don't think that's the thing I'm like the most proud of, but times where I'm thinking back, like, is there a particular moment where I felt proud? I would say like instant moments would be after certain practicals where I performed really well, just because practicals are so like high stakes and high energy and high intensity. That's at least how they feel. They shouldn't be, because like I said, if you need to redo something, you just redo it. But performing well in that moment is great, and it just is very gratifying to see your hard work pay off in any capacity, whether that's an exam or whether that's a practical or something. But that's what I would say have been like proudest moments, is when my hard work in whatever it may be pays off. So we're gonna end on this question: how has COVID affected your year, good or bad, at dental school? I could probably make a whole video about this, but I don't really want to dwell on the past too much. But like I said, the social adjustment was hard. One, just because it's a lot of people to meet and you're busy doing school, and it's hard to always know what's going on and to be all these places, but also keep up with your relationships from home and from undergrad and everything. So that was like its own thing no matter what. But with COVID, there was just less time in person. You don't get to just hang out at the school. You go for your activities and you go home. Most of the things around town were shut down. So I think socializing took a big hit from COVID and not having our summer term in person at all. We missed a lot of the big class activities and social events that they usually have with all the clubs and like the first year's bar crawl and all these things. So I think that was probably the biggest negative. But positively, I would say that our clinical experience, as far as I know and how I personally feel, has been really strong still, despite the temporary shutdown. And I'm pretty happy with our clinical experience and our exposure so far to all of our practicing time in sim lab, but also getting into clinic and learning more about patient care and everything through our assisting and doing our different rotations. We seem pretty much on track. So for my year and my own perspective, I would say that's been a positive despite everything. And for a lot of people, the flexibility of the online classes would be a positive. For me, there's positives and negatives to it. Like I said, I love that I'm able to take days off when I need to make appointments and do things that I have to do. It's all very great. But I think that I would benefit from more structure and from in-person lectures just for my own productivity, and I'd probably start doing better in my classes. But there's pros and cons to everything. So on that note, that will be the end of this video. I know it was very long. I knew it would be very long, but I hope you stuck around. I hope the timestamps were helpful for finding all the questions that you might have needed information on. But as always, if you ever need anything at all about dental school, if you have any questions, if I can help you in any way, please, please, please reach out to me on Instagram. And if you want to help me out, it would be really great if you shared this video with some of your dental school classmates, maybe your roommates, maybe your class's chat page or something. That way more people can get this information and feel more prepared for dental school, but also more people can find my channel and follow along on my dental school journey. So with all that being said, I just want to thank you one last time for watching this video, and I will see you next week for everything I wish I knew about dental school.